Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are, because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is the not-so-great Baltimore Fire of 2025. Yeah! All right, have fun, guys. All right, so those outside of Baltimore may not know that on Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025, there was a massive fire in downtown Baltimore. And I love this picture. You know, these people just casually walking by as the fire is ablaze around them. It's just another day in Baltimore, right? And so this fire, was a 5-alarm fire at a group of buildings at the intersection of North Howard Street and West Fayette Street. And so before we take a look at what that block looks like, I just wanted to state that I'm using this article because the author states that the fire started around 3:05 at Fayette Tower. And no other article that I read, mostly from local television affiliates really, but no other article states that it was started at Fayette Tower. You know, so I went looking for Fayette Tower. And the first thing that Googly gave me for Baltimore Fayette Tower is the Phoenix Shot Tower, which I talked about, I think, in one of the Alexander Dallas Backey episodes. You know, this really isn't anywhere near the Fayette building that caught fire and collapsed. All right, and Googly also gives me this place called Prosper on Fayette as a possible location for Fayette Tower. But again, this is a few blocks to the west of the building that caught fire. And so I just thought it was interesting that I could find no mention of a Baltimore Fayette Tower at the location for this fire. You know, so who was it that told this reporter that the fire started at Fayette Tower? You know, that's very curious to me. You know, this whole fire actually is very curious to me. And so now let's take a look at this corner here, Howard Street and Fayette Street on Google Earth. And so coming in on the left here with my cursor, all right, this is Camden Yards where the Orioles play, and this is Howard Street that runs north and south through the city. And Howard Street, via the light rail, connects Anne Arundel County, BWI Airport, Baltimore City, and Baltimore County. And so, again, running north and south, going up this way, this building here is the Baltimore Civic Center. And I don't know who has the naming rights. It's called something today, PNC, Baltimore Civic Center. I don't know. Anyway, this is the corner where the Baltimore Fire of 1904 started. All right, the Great Baltimore Fire of 1904. And just to sort of show what that fire did, you know, starting in this corner, it really took out this whole area of the Inner Harbor, like around like this. All right. And so the fire from the other day is just a block north of this. This is the Civic Center here, right? That's the corner where the fire started. You know, it's this block here that just had this fire the other day. And so over the last couple days, I've been to this site a couple of times and talked to some people and taken some pictures and video, and I put it all together for this walking tour for this block of Howard Street and Fayette Street that caught on fire on Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. All right, so this is the corner where the Baltimore Fire of 1904 started, right? Baltimore Street and Howard Street. All right, I'm on Baltimore. Let me see it. We have this great building across the street from it. I'm not sure when it's from, but I'm fairly confident it predates the Baltimore Fire of 1904. The new fire from the other day on Howard Street is down where that traffic light is. I don't know if we can see that. All right, and so that's where we're headed. All right, so again, that is Baltimore Street right there with the Civic Center. All right, coming across, now going up Howard. And this is the problem we're gonna see as we go up Howard, right? This is what Howard Street looks like. This is the public light rail that runs into Baltimore County, which is closed currently because of the fire. All right, and so I'm gonna just walk along here and try not to walk into any poles like this one, which is practically a daily occurrence in my life. But this is downtown Baltimore. This is Howard Street. And we're coming up on where the fire was. I just, you know, as I'm heading up there, I just kind of wanted to illustrate what this corridor truly looks like. And we're coming up on where the fire was. I just, you know, as I'm heading up there, I just kind of wanted to illustrate what this corridor truly looks like. All right, more of this again, just Howard Street, coming up Howard Street. But this is the state of Howard Street. All right, so I just want to demonstrate that city block I just walked where the fire was. Yeah, I didn't really do a good job when I was recording it, but just to show real quick, interesting that there's a car parked almost in the exact same spot as where I filmed it this morning. But I just wanted to show, like, there is not an open storefront on this block at all. The tops of the buildings actually look like they've been recently renovated. You know, so maybe there's action that can happen there, but the storefronts along the bottom, like this is not an active Boost Mobile store. None of these stores along here are open. This is the block that burns, and none of these are open either. There's nothing open along there, as we'll see. But I just wanted to show that some of the buildings actually look like there's been action and renovation happening in them above. You know, there's just nothing happening down below, and there's still lots of graffiti and closed shops. All right, so we're going to continue with the block that burned. Okay. All right, so this right here is the corner of Fayette and Howard where the fire broke out, right? It was on this corner here. Whoops. All right. There was a building collapse. There's a bus coming and everything. I'm going to walk around this whole block, but we're going to take a closer look at this block of Howard Street. I like that they still have the countdown for a closed street, but that's okay. All right, so it's on this corner that the fire on September 2nd started, right? Specifically, I'm told it was this building here, which I'll try to get a better shot of. Of course, you know, trees are always going to get in the way. Again, Fayette Street here, building collapse on the other side, which we'll take a look at to wrap this thing up, I think. All right, so I'm told this one here, let's see if I can get in on it. I don't know what those are called. Is that cornices? I don't know. I don't know if those are cast iron or not. I know that this building down here we're going to look at is one of the dozen or so cast iron facade buildings left in Baltimore City that caught fire because of this. This is a registered National Historic Landmark. But here, let's see if I can get up on that. You can see the roof burned out here. And so when I came, I did come down here the other day and talk to some people and took some footage and shots. It just didn't work out. But I was told, let's see. All right, that the fire started in this one here. All right, and as we'll see, there's a shorter building right next to it. Let's see, can we get it in? There it is, right? So we have this tall building. This is the one that first caught fire. We have this smaller building right next to it that really, you know, that hole there, I don't know what caused that hole. Brick? I don't know. But these windows are intact down here, you know, and although, yeah, there is some new plywood maybe from the fire. But the most interesting thing about this is that there's a wide alley that you could fit a really big, let's see, there might even be a big truck in there now. Let's see, hold on guys. All right, see, there's a big piece of equipment in this alley. And so the story goes is that this one caught on fire, and then out of nowhere, this one went up. And the eyewitness that I talked to the other day said that the fire in this building started like in the center of the building off to the left a little bit of what we're looking at here. You know, so maybe right towards the far left end of that mural maybe. He said flames started shooting out of there while this one was going up. Whoops, there it is. And so Yeah, there is some spectator video I'm going to try to link in this video of people, you know, witnessing the fire as it happened and talking about how did this one catch on fire. It was a calm day. There wasn't a lot of wind, anything like that. So as far as I know, they haven't determined a cause of this fire yet. But one thing I wanted to feature real quick, though, is again, that fire allegedly jumped from here to here. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but there's no damage on the side of this building. It doesn't look to be any fire damage, burn marks, smoke damage, anything for a fire that allegedly hopped from here to here, you know. And again, maybe the explanation will be embers and the wind, and I'm going to check the weather conditions from that day. But all right, so this is the weather for September 2nd, 2025. And as far as wind goes, you know, in the afternoon, daytime, they say almost 7 miles an hour to the east, you know, and that fire blazed south to north. Right? And the people I spoke to the other day said it was a calm day, and everybody was surprised at how the fire spread, jumping this alley. This building here is the George Knipp building, and it is one of the last iron facade buildings left in Baltimore City. Not a lot of great story, we'll get into it, but it is one of the few left, and so I'm sure they're going to make an effort to preserve that facade. But all right, so we're going to take a look around the whole block. All right, so all right, on Lexington now, discount center. Gotta love a dude cleaning a closed street. I love that. All right, so this is that building, and so one thing I was like, see, the street's closed, so I get to walk in it. But again, you know, of course, trees blocking the lovely dilapidated facade of this block here. Yeah, I think got massive crews cleaning up on this very closed street. Alright, but you know, so I mean, even though that looks like newer plywood, it's been vandalized already with graffiti and stuff. I don't know how old that is, or if that's new to the recent fire. It is crazy. How many guys are 1, 2, 3, 4 guys cleaning the street? I got some blown out. I don't know if that's from the fire from the other day, but that's the thing about this block, right? And a lot of these blocks down here is that these buildings have been abandoned for 20, 30, maybe more years. You know, when you're taking the light rail in and out of Baltimore City, it is a depressing sight. You know, and we're gonna talk. See, this was at one time a cool building. What's that up there? Can't make that out. Eagle, maybe. But yeah, as I was saying, very depressing. Like that, all of this is just so blown out and dilapidated. Right? And so we're going to talk about like what a fire, like how deep did this fire go from that corner down here, right? Because like I said, I'm walking down Lexington. Did it rage in the center of all of these buildings as well? What kind of infrastructure damage was done to these buildings as part of the fire? Because this is a rather large city block. And again, they have the whole block closed off. Except I don't think they have Fayette Street closed off. We'll take a look at that in a second. Coming up here, we have Park Avenue, right? And again, sort of the blight continues. And, you know, I don't want to have to say this too much, but, you know, this is what the governor of Maryland, you know, would like Donald Trump to come take a look at. You know, are you sure about that? And I'm going to show some other things too. All right, coming up on Park Avenue here. Hold on. All right, so that is Lexington. This is Park Avenue, the backside of those facades that caught on fire on Howard Street. This one looks later. This one looks certainly 1930s-ish, maybe. I don't know. I don't know about this one. The cool sign on the top, cool advertisement on the top. That one definitely could be a little bit older. Unfortunately, Park Street, or Park Ave, whatever it is open to traffic, so I'm not going to walk in the middle of it. But I will try not to hit my favorite signs that love to jump out and attack me every chance they get. All this blown out. Is this old fire damage? Is this new fire damage? You know, it's tough to say. But again, some of the Pez Boy, is that what that says in the window there? Pez Boy, that's what stuff says up there too. Pez Boy, I wonder who he was. But that's been there a while, definitely. Alright, and now, see, you can kind of see, again, there's a lot of cool architecture, old stuff, still standing in Baltimore. Just, and who knows what kind of shape, really. Alright, now this opening back here where this tree is, this open space here, this is behind those facades that caught on fire. Let's see, is there anybody coming? Alright, and so, like that corner down there, I don't know if we can see that little walking guy, maybe. Alright, that's Fayette Street. This is that alley between the two where somehow the fire spread from the buildings on this side to the buildings on this side with, you know, no real weather conditions to speak of. There's no like bridge or tunnel or maybe there could be a tunnel for all I know, but there's certainly no bridge connecting these two buildings up top or any way for the fire to sort of really spread from one side to the other. But this must be the building collapse that they say happened on Fayette Street. Seems, once we walk on Fayette Street, maybe we'll get a better view, but yeah, they got backhoes and stuff here now to, again, things that were not here yesterday. They got, looks like they're going to be hauling away. See, like, so clearly there was a building or something here. Oh, there's crime scene tape, which also wasn't here yesterday, of which I am going to, of course, hop right over. And so, what we have, this is the burnt out backside of it. The building collapse here. I have some stuff from yesterday. I was able to, I don't know if we could see behind the backhoe there. I climbed up on that. See, like, it's open. I'm just going to walk in there. Somebody can tell me to stop. I'll stop. Alright, so this is where the building collapsed. Now, they say in the newspaper articles and on the news and stuff, they said that was on Fayette Street address, I guess. I don't know what that building was. We'll have to take a look at. All right, so just real quick as I'm editing this, I just have to share this. All right, this McDonald's, which is across the street on Fayette, it's on the corner of Fayette and Howard, right? It's closed. All right, so in my tenure in Baltimore, which is now 17-ish years, south of Fayette Street to the Inner Harbor, 3 McDonald's and a Burger King has closed in the last 17 years. How do fast food franchises like that close in downtown Baltimore? Nobody murders fast food better than Baltimore. The Google Earth, but I mean, you can take a look at the devastation of this fire back here. This is all muddy. And again, I have a little bit better from back here. I do climb up on that and get close, but I just had to climb up this little wall here. Whoa! All right, let's see if I can get in here. All right. Yeah. The devastation of Apollyon. All right. But yeah, definitely took out this whole city block. Just rubble, devastation. Yeah, again, that's Fayette Street. So let's take a walk down Fayette Street and wrap this thing up. All right, so that's the, I'm guessing, the side entrance maybe to that sort of larger building I just looked at. All right, it's really cool. Yeah, it makes me think that at one point this building here just maybe even took up this whole city block, you know. That's kind of how I envision it. But again, I have to assume that these are abandoned here. There's nothing going on in these buildings. All right, this is, you know, that's the back side of the one that collapsed as we walk up Fayette. All right, this is where they say the building collapsed. All right, that's the corner of Howard Street there. All right, and again, just already abandoned, dilapidated buildings that have been this way for 30 plus years or so. All right, and so this has been my walking tour of the Howard Street block that burned on September 2nd, 2025. And I'm going to put it together and see what I got. All right, so before we move on, I just want to touch on the building that burned, that cast iron building, right? And it was this George Knipp and Brother building. And sadly, this is the best picture of it that I have. All right, it's this one in the center here. All right, totally just collapsed in on itself. And so, all right, the George Knipp and Brother building, as I was saying, is one of 14 cast iron architecture buildings in Baltimore. And there really isn't all that much known about it, right? They say that it was originally the location of John Knipp's furniture business and his brother George Knipp's enterprise in gas fixtures and plumbing supplies. But unfortunately, you know, Googly doesn't offer me anything on the Knipps. I couldn't really follow up on them at all. But they say that this building was built in 1875, right? And so, as I was saying, I'm sure they're going to do their best to preserve this cast iron front for whatever they're going to put here later. And so, speaking of being vacant and dilapidated, at least one local news reporter is doing their job when they publish this article: "Concerns over vacant buildings arise after 5-alarm fire in downtown Baltimore." And this was published just a couple days ago, September 4th, a couple days after the fire. It's interesting that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is investigating this. You know, I didn't realize that, you know, downtown Baltimore fires would be a federal investigation, right? And, you know, but they were again on the scene of a 5-alarm fire that ripped through multiple vacant historic buildings on the west side of downtown Baltimore. All right, the cause of the fire remains under investigation. So even after a few days, and as far as I know, they still haven't determined the cause of it. All right, so here we get to the meat of it, right? The brick cast iron fronted structure dates to 1875, but like so many other buildings along North Howard Street, it has sat vacant for years. And some of the structures have already been condemned. All right, that has been the state of that that stretch of Howard Street for years. The entire time I've been in Baltimore, and at least double that is my understanding. And here's a picture of the collapse on Fayette Street before they bulldozed some of that down, I guess. Where's the part that I want to? Okay, redevelopment delays, right? And this is where the story of this fire gets interesting, right? It says that the area is part of the ambitious Superblock redevelopment and Five and Dime Historic District, a multi-million-dollar project that struggled for years. All right, so Mayor Brandon Scott, our mayor, he says that Howard Street is an important thing. And they've been talking about the Superblock since I was at Mervo High School. So they've been trying to develop this block of Howard Street since our current mayor was in high school. So, and think about that for a minute. And we're going to come back to this in a second. The mayor said that the 12,477 vacant buildings in Baltimore are the lowest number in about 20 years. So, right, if I can think about this, 12,477 vacant buildings in Baltimore City. And the mayor is committed to reducing the number of vacant structures to 0 in 15 years. But of course, that plan faces funding challenges. 0 in 15 years, 12,477. And so now this vacant buildings. And so now this kind of ties into what's been happening in Maryland with the feud between Governor Wes Moore and Donald Trump. And let's bring that up real quick. All right, so it's no secret that President Trump has been very vocal about sending the National Guard into Baltimore, as he has done in D.C., to much early success. And he cites Baltimore's crime statistics as the driving force that may make this happen. All right, but the Governor Wes Moore here and Baltimore City Mayor Brandon Scott, they will cite Baltimore's historic drop in homicides this year as proof that Baltimore doesn't need the National Guard. And while this is a fantastic statistic, they trumpet this stat so loudly that they're drowning out the fact that less violent crimes like robbery and property damage are on the rise in local communities, right? And this is no small problem as this may make it seem, right? This is a big problem in some Baltimore neighborhoods. Businesses getting vandalized, mobs of people just hanging out in the streets. It gets insane in some of these Baltimore neighborhoods, right? But, regardless of all of that, Governor Wes Moore has even invited Donald Trump to take a walk through Baltimore on a public safety walk. And when I first read this, as great as the drop in murder rate is, I was like, well, where are they going to take him on a safety walk in Baltimore City? Are they going to take him to Mount Washington? Are they going to take him to Ruxton? because I certainly don't think that Governor Wes Moore is going to take President Trump to the part of Howard Street that looks almost exactly the same after a giant fire ripped through it as it did before. Hey, let's take a look. Here's that block of Howard Street, right? Really, the only noticeable difference is that there are no more roofs on these places and the windows are blown out. All right, but otherwise, just like I said, you could see the fact that the roof has collapsed and stuff. But otherwise, it looks almost exactly the same. Even this building here, like this round hole in this window is the same, from whenever this was taken to when the fire happened just a few days ago. I don't think he has any intention of taking Donald Trump down this blown out stretch of Howard Street, which, unfortunately, anybody who rides the light rail through Baltimore actually has to take in on a daily basis. Nor do I think Wes Moore wants to take President Trump to a neighborhood like this one. All right, so without naming names, I actually went to look at an apartment right in this neighborhood, and it is embarrassing what they're asking for to live in this type of neighborhood, right? Do you think this is where Wes Moore wants to bring Donald Trump? We got 1 vacant, 2 vacants. There's another one in this one, 3 vacants. Right? This is all, this is what lower middle class Baltimore City has to deal with, right? All these blown out neighborhoods. Like I said, it is crazy what people are asking to rent one of these types of row homes in neighborhoods that look exactly like this. Another blown out one across the street. Like this block is all right the rest of the way, maybe. Who knows how many of these are abandoned here? I don't know. But Baltimore is a dying city. And if I were mayor or governor, I would not be putting the cart before the horse. It is great that the murder rate is down, but so much more in Baltimore suffers, right? And so anyway, what makes me sort of think about all of this, again, is to, why? Why would they be pushing against Trump this way when Baltimore clearly needs help, And maybe that's because they have their own plan, and it's been in place for a while now. And what tipped me off to that was this Superblock thing that they talk about in this article here, wherein our esteemed mayor, Brandon Scott, he talks about the Superblock being on the table since he was in high school. He's not that old a guy, so, maybe 15 years or something like that. But The area is part of the ambitious Superblock redevelopment and Five and Dime Historic District, a multi-million-dollar project that struggled for years. All right, so they have a hyperlink, so you got to click on that, right? And here it is. This is the Superblock Five and Dime Historic District project. This is the block that just burned, right? And so what's all within this is the Superblock, the historic Five and Dime, right? So the whole center part just burned out for them. All right, so what does it say here? It says that, all right, so without reading all of this just goes into what their plan is. They want to, knock down most of the structures, build up around the old fronts as best they can, and revitalize the retail district of downtown Baltimore. That's the plan, right? Which Googly greatly simplifies for us when it says that the Baltimore Superblock refers to a long-stalled 18-building, 18 3/6s, mixed-use downtown redevelopment project on the city's west side. It says that the Baltimore Development Corporation, the BDC, terminated its 2020 agreement with the latest developer, West Side Partners, in October 2024 due to repeated delays and failure to secure financing. A new request for proposals is expected in early 2025 to find a new developer for the site. Now, I didn't find anything about any new proposals, but I was very curious. I wanted to know more. Well, who are these West Side Partners, right? So I found this article about the Baltimore Development Corporation terminating its agreement on the Superblock. And so it gave me this great picture of Fayette Street. This is the building that collapsed in the fire. And it's interesting that it says here, this is from October 2024, that the building next to it had collapsed all on its own without a fire. But yeah, so this is the building that was there that collapsed during the fire from a few days ago. All right, so this is the good stuff, right? The Baltimore Development Corporation has terminated its agreement with West Side Partners, LLC, the group that proposed to build a $150 million to $200 million mixed-use project called the Compass. That's what they were going to call that whole complex, I guess, the Compass. Now we're seeing money as a motive to something, right? $200 million is a lot of money, especially for a struggling city like Baltimore. If this project kept getting hit with snags, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. It's no great leap to think that there might be some arson or something happening around here to clear the way for some of these projects, right? Especially now that they're looking for new bids. And this is interesting because a lot has changed in Baltimore in the 5 years since the Baltimore Development Corporation was awarded this bid. There has been a lot of development money coming into Baltimore City. Billions of dollars, right? Let's take a look. Starting right at the Inner Harbor, right? The redevelopment of Harbor Place, a $900 million redevelopment project where they're going to knock down the pavilions on Pratt and Light Streets and open the space up, emphasizing green space. and they want to put 1,000 new apartments down there. And construction is expected to start in late 2026. So many buildings downtown are being converted into apartments. They are expecting a big influx of people into Baltimore. All right, 231 apartments here, 300 workforce housing units here, right? The Civic Center, I was close. It's the CFG Bank Arena. That just opened earlier this year following a $150 million renovation. And there's a lot of money coming in. Harbor Point. T. Rowe Price just moved there. They call that Harbor East, I think, over there. And the 500-unit Allied Harbor Point luxury apartment tower. Right? I mean, there are luxury suites opening all over the place in South Baltimore and along the harbor. $55 million, 331-unit sanctuary at Cross Keys. So I wonder who they're going to provide sanctuary for or from. I don't know. Pimlico. They're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into Pimlico so the Preakness can stay forever, right? And there's this One Westport Place, $350 million, 43-acre development, 250 new townhomes, 14-acre park, 140 unit affordable housing, just billions of dollars of redevelopment money coming into Baltimore for who? Right? Baltimore has been so crime laden and run down and such a dilapidated type city in so many areas. Now, who are they expecting to attract with all of this luxury redevelopment in downtown Baltimore? I mean, they're expecting big things down here, which is what raises so many flags about, this fire happening and the Superblock 5 and dime project crapping out. And then, within the year, that area burns down and is now open for new bid proposals, which will ideally benefit the city, but ultimately probably only benefit the politicians and businessmen because the city apparently now owns this land again, right? So the idea of arson or deliberate destruction of what's left of this little block in downtown Baltimore really got the old apophenia running after I played back this clip, which was taken along Lexington Street right around the corner from the George Knipp building, which is here. George Knipp building here, the clip along Lexington I'm talking about, and as I said, the eyewitness that I talked to the fire said that flames started coming out from around here. And so my observation on Lexington here was that this plywood looked awfully new, yet was covered in graffiti.
Right, well, it's been vandalized already with graffiti and stuff. I don't know how old that is.
All right, so this is, again, right around the corner. So with the George Knipp building kind of going up in the middle, I asked myself, how hard would it have been for a small crew to remove some old rotted plywood and go in and place some incendiary devices deep inside this building and then just cover their tracks with new plywood? I mean, it's not like any of the people wandering around that part of Howard Street would even notice anything like that happening. And so I wanted to take a closer look at the city's partners in all of this. West Side Partners, LLC. And the story here for them begins with former Mayor Jack Young, who selects West Side Partners in December 2020 to purchase and develop the area once known as the Superblock, right? Well, we just looked at what all of that was, right? So acting as a representative of the city, I guess, he sells West Side Partners that parcel of land for $4.5 million. And so the interesting thing about this is that Mayor Jack Young is an interim mayor. I mean, he was only mayor for about a year, sworn into office after Mayor Catherine Pugh resigned in disgrace. And, so it's interesting that he's associated with this kind of land deal, $4.5 million, interim mayor, but he was city council president for a long time, definitely a Baltimore politics insider, but relatively free from like personal scandal that I know about. Maybe Mary might know a few things that I don't. But again, just interesting. Short-term guy in office sees the sale of this land through to this West Side Partners, who were very difficult to track down. All right, West Side Partners, LLC. All right, this West Side Investment Partners, not them. All right, this is just an article about the Compass. And the fact that that old Superblock project was called the Compass, not lost on me either. There's the nautical reference, but then, also the compass and the square for our friends. I think we all know who I'm talking about there. Right? Company snapshot of West Side Partners, LLC, saferweb.gov. Oh, and this is, I looked into this as well. This is not even the same one. All right, this is a company in Minnesota. All right, I asked Googly, is the West Side Partners LLC Minnesota is not the same entity as the West Side Partners LLC. West Side Partners LLC is so elusive that I actually had to cheat. Because the webpage where I found this information actually closed on me and I could not find it again. All right, but West Side Partners LLC consists of 3 primary development firms. The Mason-Dixon Companies, led by Jason Williams. I love the spelling here. Vitruvius Company, led by Chris Janyan, and Partnered, a Pittsburgh-based boutique developer. The joint venture was formed to redevelop the Superblock site in Baltimore's West Side into a mixed-use complex called the Compass. All right, so let's see what we can find out about these companies, right? Baltimore-based community development firm, Mason-Dixon. All right, it's a family run, it says, right? Expertise that elevates your community. Family-run, socially minded company that is diverse in experience, people, and united in mission. Of course they are. They engage, build, and invest. Here's a list of their clients. A couple big ones. Under Armour, huge client for them in Baltimore City. Johns Hopkins. So I got some big names on their resume. What was the other one? Vitruvius. All right, Vitruvius is an impact-driven real estate development firm focusing on the creation of innovative spaces and experiences. Development with purpose. Yeah, glass and chrome, steel. Yeah, it's their purpose. Yeah, this was their vision for that corner, right? This was going to be the Compass. All right, so again, our house. This is like a food market in Baltimore, Park Street. So, legit. If they built Sagamore, that's the Under Armour guy and his spirits. That's rye, I think he makes out of there. And so, of course, I had to look up, what did Vitruvius mean? And so Vitruvius refers to the Roman author, architect, and engineer Marcus Vitruvius Pollio, who lived in the 1st century BC and is famous for his influential work, De Architectura. But the term also means the Roman name for a prominent family, which is very interesting considering some of the things that are about to come up. And the adjective form Vitruvian describes something related to his work or principles, such as the Vitruvian Man. And that's Da Vinci. So interesting that they took their name from this ancient architect who was Roman. Yeah. Can't make it up. And then the last one was Partnered. I love this, right? As of September 2025, there is no active boutique real estate developer in Pittsburgh with the exact name Partnered. It is possible that the name is a misremembered name, or it refers to a non-profit organization or a partner in a development project. All right, so interesting that this one isn't there. All right, so there is a ghost. There's a shadow in this West Side investment firm. This West Side Partners actually loses out on the deal. They're not going to profit at all from this, at least that I could see, right? Because they're giving up this deal with the Baltimore Development Center or whatever. But this opens up a whole other thing is, who is going to be responsible for removing all of the rubble and that building? Like, where is the money going to come from that? Is that city money? All right. It says, under most circumstances, the cleanup and restoration following a fire are the responsibility of the property owner, not the city. And so now we know that this West Side Partners, they had bought it for $4.5 million, right? And so I'm guessing the property reverted back to the city. So this just makes me think that the city is going to be responsible for cleaning up the rubble after that fire. That's going to be taxpayer money paying for this stuff.
How convenient.
While city leaders like Mayor Brandon Scott, if he's still around when it happens, they're the ones who are going to be profiting from whatever new deal is made for that block, for the Superblock. To kind of wrap it up here, there's just a lot of interesting stuff with all of this development going on and this fire and the war of words between the governor and the president here. And there's more to this, especially with all the money coming into Baltimore, right? And this fire happening the way that it has and when it has at the beginning of September, right? Because we're coming up on the 119th anniversary of the Baltimore Jubilee of 1906. And both events corresponding with the Roman calends, as discussed in the Jubilee episodes way back when. There is just so much that needs to be done with this story. And, unfortunately, this has gone on too long and I have to wrap this one up. But to close it out with just the tiniest of cherries, not only are we approaching the 119th anniversary of the Jubilee, we are in the 121st anniversary year of the Great Fire of Baltimore. And the address of the George Knipp and Brother building on Howard Street? 121. All right, so that's all I have for this one. Again, I think this is a big story here. I think there's a lot going on with this story and this fire and everything. And, you know, all right, so that's all I have for this one. Again, so much more needs to be done with this story. But remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies, right? So until the next one, cheers.